Hi there. Today I want to talk about myths, fallacies and assumptions. For the last few weeks we've been working on fractious problem solving, and part of that problem solving involves making assumptions about things we know and maybe some things we don't know. Specifically today I want to talk about social or cultural construction of ideas and how that leads to assumptions. I also want to talk about the social construction of notions and ideas that may lead to naturalistic fallacies. Social construction or cultural construction is an idea or belief or concept that people have created and then they organise their actions or thoughts around it. These things could not have existed without the influence of human or culture or society, and each of them could easily have been constructed differently given different people or a different culture in a different time or space. Let me give you some examples. An excellent example is the value of money. In actuality, paper money has very little intrinsic value, maybe the value of the paper and potentially the metal strips inside the paper and the printing. These things combined have much less value than the extrinsic value that we culturally construct on a piece of paper. In a similar vein, think about coins. Coins have an economic or face value of a penny or 25 cents or $1, but the actual value of the metal of the coin could be quite different. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first started travelling, I left my home in Perth, Western Australia to go to South Australia. It was the first time I'd ever crossed a border between states, and I honestly and naively thought that there would be a line on the ground. I was very disappointed when I crossed the border and there was no line on the road, just a sign saying welcome to South Australia. These lines on the map are more than just lines on a map. As cultural constructions with shared meaning, they dictate our nationality. They dictate who can travel where and who can do what and who can bring things across borders and what's going to be charged for what tariff. Just because some people were born on one side or another of a culturally constructed line, they have a different government and live completely different lives. These imaginary, culturally constructed lines are very, very powerful. Another excellent example is football. I included this cartoon in the syllabus. Imagine if the US and England were to ever get together for a world football tournament. Could you imagine what that would be like? The Americans would turn up with their gridiron uniforms and the Brits would turn up with their soccer ball. Each would have different conceptions of the game, the rules, how to win and how to play. You would have the same problem if you headed down to Australia and tried to have a football tournament there. All the rules are completely different. Despite each culture having the game of football, the differences are socially constructed. Cultural construction permeates almost every element of our lives. If you're living in a westernized country, wearing a white dress to a wedding might be the norm. You might assume everyone does it this way. But in reality, in some countries, for example India, women wear red wedding dresses. This is their norm, and they likely assume that all other brides in the world wear red dresses as well. In fact, in India, the only women that wear white are widows. When you see this image, what do you think of? Do you think breakfast? This is because your notions of breakfast are culturally constructed. But what if you saw this? Would you think breakfast? In some cultures, this is breakfast, and this is what people expect breakfast to look like. Not bacon or eggs or sausages. That is because what we eat for breakfast, or any other meal for that matter, is a social construction. Social constructions seem natural and obvious to the people who accept them, but they may or may not represent reality. They are an invention or an artifice of a given culture or society, and as such they can become assumptions, much like you might assume that everyone drives on the right-hand side or the left-hand side of the road, depending on where you came from. Let's look at another example. When you look at this picture, do you instantly think blue is for boys and pink is for girls? That's not always been the case. Less than 100 years ago, a very famous infants magazine instructed parents that it was generally accepted that pink was for boys and blue was for girls. The reason they gave was that pink was more decided and stronger and more suitable for a boy, while blue was more delicate and daintier and prettier for a girl. In 1927, Life magazine published a table illustrating several department stores' take on the preferred colours for different genders. The majority felt that pink was more preferential for boys, with blue being the choice for girls. My point is that cultural constructions change over time and are heavily influenced by political and economic factors. Today, there is still a legacy of pink and blue, but many parents, influenced by feminist thought, are choosing more gender-neutral colours, colours like yellow and green. Up until now, I've discussed fairly easy to understand examples of cultural construction: money, map lines, weddings, food, baby clothes. But what about culturally constructed ideas and notions that we hold very near and dear? So near and dear that we defend them like they are the only way of doing something, maybe because we think that they are natural or right. Think about things like democracy, freedom, race, gender, diversity. And what about things like love, and specifically mother's love? In the next section of this module, you'll be reading 2 articles that challenge the concept of mother's love and suggest that it could in fact be a naturalistic fallacy. What you perceive to be natural might merely be a social construction.